I came home with one duffel bag, one pair of boots I still trusted, and zero expectations. That's what 15 years in the army does to you. You stop hoping for parades, you aim for quiet landings. The house on Oakage Drive looked smaller than I remembered. It had the same peeling porch swing, the same lopsided mailbox I fixed 3 times as a teenager. What it didn't have anymore, apparently, was a front door that opened for me. I knocked once, no answer. Knocked again. Heather finally swung the door open, barefoot, half a yoga mat under her arm, and gave me that tight-lipped smile she used to save for Jehovah's Witnesses. "Oh, you're here," she said, like I was early for a potluck no one invited me to. I texted. "You didn't say which day?" I said Friday. She shrugged. "Anyway, shoes off, please. I just mopped." I stared at her for a full 5 seconds. Then I bent down, untied my boots, and stepped in sock-footed into what used to be our mother's house. Only now it smelled like lavender oil and burning eucalyptus. The hallway was lined with abstract watercolors and signs that said things like, "Release what no longer serves you." I guess that included family. "I've got back-to-back clients till 3, Heather said, leading me past a room with a singing bowl and a woman crying into a tissue. "So I'll show you your space quickly." "My space?" "Not your room, not Mom's guest room, just your space." Like I was an Airbnb guest and the checkout was Monday. We passed what used to be the living room. Now it was the energy room. The couch was gone, replaced with floor pillows, crystals, and some kind of copper pyramid structure. I looked around and didn't see a single photo of our mom. No diploma, no wedding photo, not even a dusty bookshelf. It was like she never existed. "Where's Mom's stuff?" Heather glanced back. I boxed it up. Most of it's in the garage, some I donated. We're minimalists now. Minimalist. That woman spent her whole life clipping coupons and keeping 5 different types of mustard just in case. She'd roll in her grave if she knew her spice rack had been replaced with Palo Santo and tea that smells like grass. Clippings. Heather stopped at the far end of the hallway and opened a door. "Here you go. It's small, but it's clean. Sheets are fresh. Hell 5. The room was about the size of my sleeping quarters on deployment. No closet, a mini fridge, a set of laminated house rules taped to the wall, no loud calls after 9 p.m., no guests, no food outside the kitchen. Wi-Fi password changes weekly. I turned to her. "You've got other people staying here." She blinked. "Sometimes when I host retreats, it's how I sustain the space. I'm a small business owner now." "Sure. Small business owner rebranded from older sister who didn't move out after Mom died." "Where do you want me to put my boots?" "Garage is fine. That way they won't track energy." I was too tired to argue. 15 years of orders taught me to pick my battles. This wasn't one yet. She left the room and I closed the door behind her. Saturday, on the edge of the bed, listened to the hum of soft spa music coming from down the hall. Smelled sage and judgment. Welcome home, soldier. Enjoying the story so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit subscribe. It helps a ton. I took a deep breath and opened the mini fridge. It was empty except for 2 cans of coconut water and a sticky note that read, "Please label all items. We share this space respectfully." The handwriting was Heather's. Still neat, still trying to control everything without saying it outright. I lay back on the bed. It creaked. The ceiling had a tiny crack over the vent. My duffel bag sat unopened at my feet. I hadn't slept in 31 hours, and still, I couldn't close my eyes. Because even with everything stripped, even with no one yelling orders at me, I could tell one thing: I didn't come home. I walked into someone else's empire. I woke up to the sound of wind chimes and the scent of someone else's peace. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then I saw the laminated rules on the wall and remembered. I was sleeping in a repurposed storage room in my mother's house, now my sister's healing studio. I rolled out of bed, pulled on a sweatshirt, and walked barefoot to the kitchen. Madison, Heather's daughter, was at the table with a bowl of granola and her AirPods in. She gave me a nod. Not a good morning, not even a half smile. Just the bare minimum nod of a 17-year-old who's already been coached not to make too much eye contact. The fridge was stocked with vegan mayo, oat milk, and 5 different brands of kombucha. No eggs, no bacon, no coffee. I grabbed a glass of water. Heather walked in just as I was closing the fridge. "Morning," she said. "Chipper. Hope you slept okay." Like a rock on a slab. She ignored that. "I'm actually holding a group this morning, so if you could keep the hallway clear after 10 that would be great." I looked at her. She wore a flowing white wrap dress and 10 bangles on each wrist. She looked like a moon priestess. My own sister had transformed herself into a walking Etsy shop. "What kind of group?" "Trauma release," she said brightly. "Very powerful breathwork, sound healing, inner child rebirth. You're welcome to join, but it's donation-based, and we're at capacity." End quote. I held my tongue, not because I had nothing to say, but because I've seen what silence does to people like Heather. It makes them uncomfortable. It gives you the upper hand. I nodded once and took my glass back to the little room. At 10:05 sharp, the hallway filled with the sound of soft gongs and adult women crying. Someone chanted, "Let it go," while another voice murmured about inner wounds. I slipped in my earbuds and pulled a pillow over my face. By noon, it was quiet again. I stepped out and found Heather in the kitchen brewing a kettle of something that smelled like boiled tree bark. "I wanted to talk to you about logistics," she said, her voice taking on that administrative tone I remembered from childhood. The same one she used when we were kids. And she'd tell me, "Mom said you can't come." "Sure," I said, sitting. "I know you just got out," she began, hands folded like a principal about to expel someone, "and I want you to feel safe and grounded. But also this space needs to stay balanced and fair." There it was, the speech, the warm-up, to the real message. So I said, "So I think it's reasonable for you to contribute. You're here. You're using water, electricity, internet, a yoga mat room, a garage with a leak, and a mini fridge." She smiled tight. "It's $1,200 a month. That's what I charge for long-term guests. You can pay weekly if that helps." I looked her dead in the eye. "You're charging me to stay in Mom's house." "Louie, this isn't Mom's house anymore," she said quickly. "This is my business, my life's work. And if you want to be part of it, you have to respect the boundaries." My jaw locked. I kept it there behind clenched teeth. "You know, I sent money to Mom every month while I was deployed." I said, "You know that, right?" She blinked. "I mean, sure, but we all did our part. Did you, when I took care of her every day while you were gone?" I stared because I was in Syria. "You made that choice," she said and shrugged. There it was again. That mix of self-righteousness and selective memory. Heather had a way of rewriting history while looking you in the face like she honestly believed the new version. I stood up and walked back toward my room. "You can leave the check in the basket on the altar," she called after me. "It's labeled Abundance Exchange." I closed the door. Saturday back on the bed, stared at the blank wall and thought about how I trained for survival in enemy territory, but somehow forgot to prepare for this. That night, I showered in lukewarm water and dried off with a towel that smelled like sage. When I stepped out, the hallway was lined with people again, more clients, more seekers, more people who didn't know they were stepping on the bones of someone else's family history. I walked into the kitchen and saw a man in his 60s stirring herbal tea while wearing toe rings. "Beautiful energy here," he said to me. I nodded. "Yeah, it used to smell like chicken soup and floor polish." He didn't know what to say, so he just smiled and walked off humming. I sat down and watched Heather laughing with 2 women talking about ancestral trauma and clearing old stories. I wanted to ask her if lying counted as ancestral trauma, if erasing your mother's furniture counted as clearing stories. Instead, I poured myself a glass of kombucha and watched the bubbles rise and fall like nothing was ever still in this house, because it wasn't. Not anymore. I started counting how many passive-aggressive notes were taped around the house. By day 3, I was at 11. 1 above the thermostat, "Please honor the sacred temperature." 70 degrees is balanced for all. 1 on the kitchen cabinet, "Herbal teas only after 8 p.m. Caffeine disrupts energy fields." 1 on the bathroom mirror. "This is a judgment-free zone. Please keep the space clear of combat energy." Combat energy. That one got me. Like trauma could waft off my uniform and stain her sacred towels. Heather had become a master of control wrapped in spiritual language. No direct confrontation, just little rules, soft music, and 1,000 tiny humiliations. I saw it in how she kindly reminded me to cleanse the garage after I tracked in mud. In how she suggested I join her morning affirmations because maybe you need some grounding after everything you've seen. Life, every word dipped in lavender and wrapped in righteousness. She never said she didn't want me there, she didn't have to. The rules did it for her. Madison mostly kept her distance. We shared a kitchen, but not much else. One night she passed me in the hallway and said, "I think it's kind of cool you were in the army." And I smiled. Next morning, Heather cornered me while I was making toast. "I'd prefer if you didn't glorify violence in this house," she said. I blinked. I said, "Good morning." "No. Heard you and Madison talking. I know your world was intense, but I try to protect her from that mindset. She's very sensitive. She carries a lot of ancestral energy. She doesn't need more hyper-masculine influence." I looked down at my hoodie and sweats, both gray, and wondered what exactly had triggered the spiritual alarms. This time, my dog tags were in a drawer. My boots were in the garage. I hadn't mentioned the army once. Still, somehow, I was the toxic one. By the end of week 1, I'd been assigned a towel color. Green is yours, don't mix with blue, a kitchen shelf, bottom level, avoid gluten zones, and a peace stone to place under my pillow for harmony. Heather handed it to me with both hands, and a long, unblinking smile. "You're still vibrating in defense mode," she said. "This should help." I nodded, took the rock, didn't say a word. But something was shifting, not just in me, in how I was being watched, measured. That Friday, Heather invited 3 of her regulars to stay overnight, a women's empowerment retreat. She gave them my parking spot and asked if I could use the street just for the weekend. The street, by the way, had no shade and was right by the trash bins. At dinner, one of the guests asked me what I did in a past life to end up so angry in this one. I didn't answer. I got up, took my plate, and ate in the garage. The garage was hot, dusty, and full of storage bins labeled Heather's Legacy. My cot was wedged between 2 shelves and an old rowing machine that hadn't been used since 2013. The Wi-Fi didn't reach out there, and the outlet sparked if you plugged in more than one thing, but it was quiet sometimes. That's all you want. Heather would occasionally open the door and peek in, offering comments like, "Maybe the space reflects how you feel inside." Or, "Trauma gets stored in walls, too." That I nodded. Always nodded. Let her think she was winning. She wasn't, because I'd started doing what she never imagined I would. I started looking. One evening, when Heather and her guests were in the middle of a candle circle, I slipped into the attic. The pull-down ladder creaked, but nobody heard me over the sound of healing gongs and humming bowls. The attic smelled like insulation and pine. My old boxes were gone, but something was still there, something she'd forgotten. A cardboard file box wedged behind a stack of yoga mats and a taxidermy owl Mom never liked but never threw out. Inside the box, papers, receipts, and an envelope from Bailey and Stroud LLP. Lavier. My breath tightened. I pulled it out. The seal was broken. I unfolded the first page. It was yellowed but crisp. Last Will and Testament. Alice Brooks. I flipped pages fast, heart kicking. Paragraph after paragraph detailing assets, wishes, final instructions, and then there it was. I read it twice. The house was mine. She'd left it to me, only me. But the last page signature and all was missing. Gone. My hands shook, but not from rage, from clarity. Everything Heather had done, the control, the lies, the fake generosity was based on me not knowing this one fact. And now I did. I didn't bring it up. Not the will, not the missing page, not the signature. I just put the letter back exactly where I found it, walked back down the attic ladder, and shut the door like nothing had changed, because that's what Heather expected from me. Nothing. The next morning, she cornered me by the sink while I was rinsing out a coffee mug I had to buy myself from the dollar store because the ceramic vessels in her kitchen were reserved for intentional use only. The she smiled like someone about to give a TED Talk on boundaries. So, I've been thinking, she said, drawing out every syllable like she was auditioning for a meditation app. I really need you to make a decision. About what? I asked. This living situation, she replied. It's not really sustainable. The energy is off, and frankly, it's creating imbalance. Imbalance like I was a crooked bookshelf, ruining her fune. She folded her arms. Rent is due again. I can't keep giving you discounts just because we're related. I leaned on the counter. Discounts? You're technically late for this week, she said, pulling a manila envelope from the fruit bowl. That's the total with utilities. It's very reasonable considering the space and access to amenities such as she blinked. High-speed internet, shared laundry, community kitchen, parking that I don't have anymore. Heather ignored that. Look, I know you think this place is still some kind of family home, but it's not. It's a healing space. I run a business here and everyone contributes. Everyone? Yes. Even Madison? She helps with social media and bookings. And Mom? Heather stiffened. What about her? She left this house to someone. You just never said who. Her jaw locked for half a second. She broke character, then smiled back on. Camille, you were never around. You don't know what those last few years were like. You don't get to come back and start rewriting history. I'm not rewriting anything, I said. I'm just not paying rent to someone who's pretending to be my landlord. That's when she snapped. Her voice, normally soft and performative, shot up 3 octaves and lost all its essential oils. Pay rent or leave. California Mill. I'm serious. You don't get to come here after being gone for 15 years and act like you're owed something. Lied. The word owed stung more than it should have. Because I didn't feel like I was owed anything. I just didn't want to be treated like a stray dog that wandered into someone else's life. I looked past her at the bowl of lemons on the table, the motivational quote framed on the wall, honor the sacred in all beings, and felt something shift in my chest. Not anger, not even resentment, just precision. I nodded once. Got it? She blinked. Got what? I'll leave. Her mouth opened, then closed. She hadn't expected me to call her bluff. That's not what I look. I just need fairness, equal energy exchange. I'll be out of the garage by the end of the week. She softened, tried to backpedal. You don't have to go like that. Maybe we can talk about another arrangement. But I was already walking down the hallway, past the candle table, past the row of chakra charts, and into the garage. I packed in silence. She didn't follow me. Later that afternoon, I got a text from her that said, "Please respect house energy until you leave. No loud noises or negative projections." I turned off my phone. That night, I sat on the edge of my cot and stared at the cracked concrete under my boots. I thought about the envelope in the attic. I thought about the missing last page. And then I thought about the one thing that had kept me alive through 15 years of war zones and bureaucratic chaos. Protocol. You don't go loud, you don't go early, you gather intel, you build your case, you wait for the clean shot, and that shot always comes. So while Heather went back to running women's circles and charging desperate people $250 to scream into pillows, I started planning. I made a list, find a lawyer, check the county registrar, confirm last known filing, review deed transfers, track utilities, pull property tax history, photograph all evidence. Each step felt clean, objective, tactical. The more she talked down to me, the quieter I became. She thought I was folding. I wasn't. I was aiming. The garage didn't have heat, but it had spiders, a leaking roof, and one outlet that buzzed if you looked at it wrong. I moved out of the house and into that space the same day Heather gave her latest retreat guests my old room. One of them was a woman named Sky who talked to her crystals like they were co-workers. Another was a man in his 20s who wore linen robes and claimed he could hear colors. They got fresh sheets, incense, and filtered water in carafes. I got the garage. Heather helped me carry my things out as if she were doing me a favor. "It's actually more peaceful back here," she said, fanning sage like a traffic cop. "Fewer distractions, less projection." That was her favorite word lately. Projection. As if everything I said, did, or breathed was just me projecting my unresolved issues onto her perfect spiritual sanctuary. She handed me a citronella candle and a fleece blanket. This should help with the chill and the bugs and the mood. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. By that point, silence was doing all the talking for me. Out there in the garage, I set up a makeshift cot using an old army sleeping pad, a yoga mat, and 3 towels I found in a crate marked Donation TBD. I charged my phone during the day when no one was looking, and I boiled water in an old camping kettle I kept from deployment. It was quiet except for the occasional thump from the pipes or Heather playing chakra music at full volume 2 rooms over. On the 3rd day, she stopped by with a clipboard. "I've added some structure to keep the household flowing smoothly," she said, handing me a printed chart. "Garage residents get laundry access Wednesdays only. Please pre-label any items that might be mistaken for donation." I glanced at the chart. There was an actual color-coded system that split the house into zones of sacred activity. The garage was labeled Zone 5, transient processing, not even a room, just a zone. She smiled as I scanned the paper. "This is about keeping boundaries clear. I think it's healthy for you." I didn't bother asking who else was in this mythical garage population. I knew the truth. There was only me, and that was exactly how she wanted it. Madison stopped by once, stood awkwardly in the doorway with a wrapped plate in her hands. "Mom said I shouldn't be out here, but I made extra rice," she mumbled, setting the plate down on a crate and bolting before I could say thanks. The rice was cold and plain, but I ate every bite. At night, I could hear Heather hosting her events through the thin garage wall. Laughter, affirmations, women weeping into their own reflections. She would say things like, "You're not a burden. You're a breakthrough." Or, "Let the parts of you that were never loved finally rest." Funny, I didn't see her offering any of that wisdom to me. By the end of the week, the garage had become something like a bunker. I taped a cheap curtain over the tiny window for privacy, fixed the leak above the cot with duct tape, and started storing my important files in a locked ammo box I'd carried through 3 deployments. Then one afternoon, it rained hard. I watched the puddle form under the old dresser in the corner, slowly creeping toward the cot. I got up, moved everything, laid towels down to block the flow, and sat there in wet socks, thinking about all the times I thought rock bottom would be in the desert under fire. Turns out it's 20 FT from your childhood kitchen where your sister's burning sage and calling you a guest. The next morning, Heather knocked on the garage door holding a thermos. "I made ginger tea," she said. "It helps with bitterness." I took it without a word. She lingered. "I know this hasn't been easy for you, but you have to understand this is my life now. I've built something. You can't just show up and expect me to pause everything." I nodded slowly. "Thanks for the tea." She smiled, satisfied, like we'd just had a breakthrough. But what she didn't know, what she never even considered, was that I had already started digging into the county records. I'd filed a quiet claim to verify property history. I'd requested a full legal copy of Mom's will from Bailey and Stroud. I even asked for a forensic document review to determine whether anything had been removed or altered. Heather thought I was freezing in silence, but in truth I was getting warmer. The envelope from Bailey and Stout arrived on a Tuesday, folded flat in a manila sleeve stamped confidential. It came to a P.O. box I set up in town, one Heather didn't know about. I drove there in my beat-up Ford, opened it alone in the front seat, and read every word twice before folding it shut again. The will was real, the signature was valid, and the clause about the house wasn't vague. Mom had named me sole owner of the property, effective immediately upon her passing. No trusts, no conditions, just a clear, legally binding statement. I leave the home at 48 Oakage Drive solely to my daughter, Camille D. Brooks. It wasn't sentimental, it wasn't even emotional, it was strategic. Mom had been many things, but naive wasn't one of them. What she hadn't planned for was Heather getting to the house first, or getting to the attic, or ripping out the final page and burying it in a file box beneath yoga mats and chakra boards. But now I had the original signed, witnessed, and filed. I kept that copy in a plastic folder inside the ammo box. Every night I triple-checked the lock before going to sleep. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had survived war zones only to feel safest sleeping next to a will. Heather, meanwhile, was thriving in her illusion. She booked new clients. She hosted Sunday circles on emotional clearing. She even posted videos about setting boundaries with toxic relatives that got thousands of views. One morning I walked into the kitchen to grab water, and she was filming herself next to the herb rack. "And sometimes people return just to test your energy," she said into the camera. "You have to stay strong and remember the past is not welcome in your present." She smiled sweetly when she saw me. "Oh, sorry. Are we interrupting your flow?" I grabbed a glass and left. I didn't speak, didn't raise my voice. I let her think I was defeated because that's what made her sloppy. She stopped locking the office drawer. She left mail out on the dining table. She even tossed an old folder labeled Mom onto the donation pile. I took it back to the garage, opened it carefully, and found notes from the hospice nurse, prescription records, and a small journal with Mom's handwriting. Inside was a page dated just 2 months before she passed. "I know Heather will make noise when I'm gone, but Camille will know what to do. I just hope she doesn't have to fight for it." I sat still for a long time after reading that. Mom hadn't told me the house was mine. She never called or wrote or hinted. She didn't ask for help. Maybe she thought I had enough to carry already. Maybe she believed Heather would follow the rules. Maybe she just ran out of time. But what mattered now was this. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't the villain Heather had built in her little spiritual echo chamber. I was the legal owner of this house, and I'd spent the last month living in its garage like a ghost. That night, Heather hosted another workshop. This one was called Reclaiming the Sacred Feminine. There were candles, singing bowls. Everyone wore white. I sat in the garage drinking instant coffee from a metal cup and listened to them chant about forgiveness while I reviewed the documents again, line by line, name by name. That same week, I met with a real estate lawyer named Brandon Ellis. Ex-Navy, worked in probate and property disputes. Quiet sharp. He looked over the will, the letter from the law firm, the filing records. He nodded once and said, "You're not a guest. You're the owner. Everything she's done, charging you rent, giving away your room, repurposing the space, it's all legally void." I asked him what it would take to evict her. "Proper notice," he said. 30 days delivered formally. Doesn't matter if she's your sister. The law's clear. Then I asked the harder question. "What if I don't want to give her a heads up?" He raised an eyebrow. "You mean sell the place?" "I mean sell the place without her name on the deed. She's not entitled to any warning." "No." He didn't blink. "Then you're free to do it. Quiet titles in your name. Just say the word." I thanked him, paid cash, walked out with the legal clarity I needed. Not a maybe, not a favor, not a morale debate. A fact. I owned this house. Full stop. And I didn't owe Heather anything but an envelope. The insult didn't come as a surprise. It was the delivery that caught me off guard. Heather waited until the kitchen was full. 5 guests, some sipping turmeric lattes, others balancing mason jars of chlorophyll water, all chatting about alignment and ancestral wounds. Then, as if we were filming some reality television reunion, she dropped it. "Well, not everyone contributes, of course," she said with a soft chuckle, glancing my way. "Some people just take up space like our little soldier here." The room went quiet. Someone gave an awkward smile. One woman looked down at her tea. I stood still by the fridge, hand on the handle, trying to decide if I was hungry enough to stay in that moment. Heather kept going, clearly enjoying the tension. "You know, Camille's been here for over a month. I try to set healthy boundaries, but the military mindset," she said, tilting her head toward me like I was a rescue dog with behavior issues, "doesn't really respond to feminine structure. Man." I closed the fridge. I didn't say a word, didn't storm out, just walked across the room, grabbed a banana, and left. Let them sip their sage and circle up. Let Heather perform her victimhood in peace. Back in the garage, I peeled the banana slowly, sat down on the cot, and thought, this is what she's reduced me to, a punchline in my own house. But the weirdest part? She believed it. She had repeated the narrative so many times. Camille, the drifter, the damaged vet, the unwanted guest, that I think she forgot the truth. She forgot who used to fix her car when she was broke, who sent money home when mom got sick, who enlisted so she could find herself in Bali for 3 months. She forgot I was the only reason mom stayed in that house as long as she did. But I didn't forget. That afternoon, I printed out a copy of the will from my folder and slipped it into another envelope. I didn't seal it, just held it in my hand while sitting in the garage, staring at it for a long time. The label I wrote on the front was simple for Heather, but I didn't give it to her. Not yet. That evening, Madison knocked gently on the garage door. "I left your laundry on the dryer," she said. "I ran it with mine. Hope that's okay." He nodded. "Thanks." She paused before leaving. "Mom's not always fair." I looked at her. "I know." She stepped back and closed the door quietly, like she didn't want to be caught showing basic human decency. Later, during another one of Heather's group dinners, I sat in silence at the end of the table while she monologued about boundaries and healing from familial projections. She called herself a survivor. She claimed that some people in the family never grew out of violence. She said healing only works when the environment is clean. I chewed my food. I didn't flinch when she looked at me because I knew something she didn't. Every time she spoke, she confirmed my case. I wasn't a guest. I was a legal owner. And every word she said in front of witnesses was evidence of how she tried to erase that. I made the call on a Thursday morning while Heather was out buying bulk sage and vegan incense. Brandon, the real estate attorney, picked up on the second ring. "All set," he said. "Title's clear. Transfer chain is solid. She never filed anything to contest it. And the eviction. Whenever you're ready, we do it by the Book W written notice. Proper delivery. 30 days to vacate. After that, you're entitled to possession." The wit, I hung up, walked into town, and paid for certified mail delivery with tracking and signature requirement. I didn't want Heather saying she never saw it. I didn't want her meditating it away. I wanted it documented, legal, and clean. Then I went back to the garage and waited. Not for approval, not for justice, just for the mail to do its job. That same evening, Heather held another workshop. This one called Unburdening the Inner Wound. I sat outside on a folding chair, eating a can of cold beans with a plastic spoon, listening to strangers in my house chant about boundaries they didn't live with. I heard her voice float through the window, soft and breathy. We all have someone in our lives who drains us, who clings to old roles, to past pain. But we don't have to carry that anymore. We can let go. There was a beat of silence, then a gong, then a woman sniffled. Heather continued. Louder now. "We are not responsible for the healing of those who refuse to do their own work, especially when they show up demanding space." It wasn't even subtle anymore. She wanted me to leave, but on her terms so she could play savior and martyr in the same breath. But I wasn't going anywhere because the house was mine. Because the law was on my side, because some people need to feel the floor pulled out from under them to realize they never owned it. The next morning, the envelope arrived, cream cold, heavy, addressed to Heather in careful print. I watched from the garage window as she walked barefoot to the mailbox, pulled it out, flipped it open, then paused. She read the first line right there on the lawn. Then she spun around, eyes searching the windows like she could feel me watching. I stayed still, not hidden, just quiet. She stormed inside. And for the first time since I came home, the hallway went silent. No Kims, no bowls, no gongs, just stillness. A few minutes later, she came out to the garage. No smile, no clipboard, no herbal tea. She held the notice in her hand like it burned. "What is this?" she said. "A legal notice. You're evicting me from my own house?" I met her eyes. "It's not your house." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "I took care of Mom," she said. I nodded. "And then you took over. You don't get to do this." "I already did." She opened her mouth, then closed it, looked down at the paper again like the words might change if she read them hard enough. "This isn't you," she whispered. "You're right," I said. "This is me with paperwork." She backed away like I was holding a weapon. But I wasn't. I didn't need to. She left without another word. That night, I stayed out back with a blanket over my knees and a notepad in my lap. I started writing down all the things I remembered about the house before the crystals, before the retreats, before the incense choked the air. I wrote about Mom yelling from the kitchen for us to turn off the hose. I wrote about sneaking cereal at midnight while Heather painted her nails. I wrote about the dent in the hallway from when I dropped my duffel the day I left for basic. I didn't write any of it to keep it. I wrote it so I could finally let it go. The real estate agent's name was Jody, and she didn't ask why I wanted the sale to move fast. She came by the house on a Wednesday morning while Heather was out teaching breathwork at a lakeside Airbnb. I walked her through the backyard gate, across the patio, and into what used to be Mom's den. Now it was the heart room. Pink walls, wall-mounted dream catchers, and a diffuser running lavender on a timer. Jod took one look around and said, "We'll list it as a flexible use property. Buyers love that kind of language." We moved quickly. Photos, paperwork, walkthroughs. I signed the listing agreement that same afternoon and asked her to keep my contact info private, email only, no calls. She nodded like she'd seen this before. Maybe she had. Women who'd had enough usually didn't like explaining themselves twice. The next step was unlisting the address from Heather's healing practice website. I didn't hack anything. I just submitted a takedown request through the web host. Business licenses tied to my property filed under a false claim. Illegal. The site came down in 48 hours. Heather didn't notice at first. She was too busy prepping for a weekend intensive titled Unlearn Your Mother. The irony. That weekend, I cleared out the attic quietly, efficiently, boxed up everything of mine, Mom's, even Heather's old report cards, and stashed journals. I labeled each box and slid them behind the garage workbench. I didn't throw anything out. I wasn't her. Meanwhile, the house had a private showing scheduled. I coordinated it for Monday at 11 a.m. Heather would be at a sound bath downtown. Jody arrived 5 minutes early. She looked polished, neutral, like someone who knew how to make a home look peaceful, even when it carried history in its walls. 2 couples walked through, one young and excited, the other older and practical. They liked the kitchen, the big windows, the backyard fig tree. No one asked about the age. No one commented on the salt bowls in the corners. The older woman said, "This place has good bones." I stood quietly in the garage, sipping coffee, listening through the wall. By that evening, we had 2 offers. Cash above asking. I signed the sale documents electronically. I didn't tell Heather. I didn't have to because ownership meant I didn't owe her an explanation. The next morning, I started forwarding her mail to a separate P box, one I'd opened for her under her full name. I set up temporary storage under the same name in a nearby unit, labeled everything, paid 6 months in advance. Then I filled out the seller's disclosure forms. Honestly, factually, no spite, no exaggeration. Did the house have plumbing issues? Number electrical, number difficult tenants. I left that blank. Legally, I wasn't required to say more. Jody emailed. Closing set for Friday. All we need is key handoff and formal vacancy. Vacancy. That was the word I kept circling in my head. Not victory, not revenge, just vacancy. By Wednesday, Heather still hadn't asked why mail stopped showing up. She hadn't noticed the new lockbox on the front door. She hadn't even asked why the Wi-Fi name changed to New Owner 48. She was too busy promoting her next retreat, moving on without permission. Another email blast, another flyer. The timing was almost poetic. That night I stood in the garage, bare walls caught folded duffel packed. I looked around one last time. The cracks in the ceiling, the scuff marks by the door, the paint stained from the time Heather spilled Mom's varnish and blamed me. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even relieved. Just done. Then I slipped the new keys into a sealed envelope, printed her name on the front and slid it under her bedroom door. I was brushing my teeth in the garage when I heard that high breaking sound between a scream and a gasp. Then rapid footsteps, a drawer slamming, and the clatter of something glass hitting tile. I didn't move. Instead, I spat into the sink, wiped my face, and waited. 10 seconds later, the garage door burst open. Heather stood there holding the envelope I'd slid under her bedroom door, creased, wrinkled, and flapping in her shaking hand like it might rewrite itself if she gripped it hard enough. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out for a second. Just pure static. Then, "You sold the house." I didn't blink. "I did. You sold Mom's house behind my back. It's not Mom's house anymore. And technically, it was never yours." "No." She stepped into the garage like she didn't care what line she was crossing. "You went behind my back. You had no right. No right to do this to me." "I had every right," I said, voice flat. "Legally, morally, personally, you're evicting me. Number the buyer is in 29 days. She let out this short, choked laugh, disbelief mixed with rage. "You're doing this to get back at me." I didn't answer. "You're punishing me." Still nothing. She took another step forward like she was trying to physically intimidate me, but all I saw was a woman unraveling in real time. Her eyes were wild, her breathing uneven, and her hands trembled as she waved the letter in the air like a threat that already failed. "I built a life here," she said, voice cracking. "I run a business. People come here to heal." I crossed my arms. "And you built it on a lie." She flinched. Not visibly, not dramatically, but enough. "You could have just talked to me." "I did. You told me to pay rent or leave. I didn't mean that. You said it in front of a room full of strangers." Her jaw clenched. "This house was mine in everything but name. That's the problem. It was never yours. You just got comfortable acting like it was." She looked at the floor, then back at me. Her whole body shifted. Less anger, more desperation now. "Where am I supposed to go?" "I set up storage. 6 months paid, and there's a P.O. box for your business. All you have to do is move. I can't just start over." I tilted my head. "Sure you can. Isn't that what your whole brand's about?" The second I said it, I saw the glass crack behind her eyes. She turned, stormed out, slammed the door so hard a screwdriver fell off the garage shelf. I stood there, still barefoot, watching the dust settle. That afternoon, she canceled her upcoming workshop. Her social media went dark. I didn't hear any gongs or chimes, no essential oil diffusers, just the low, frantic rumble of drawers opening, closets being emptied, and boxes being packed. By sundown, the house sounded like a moving truck. I stayed in the garage, out of sight. Madison came by around 7:00 p.m. with a trash bag full of stuff, scarves, books, tangled necklaces. She set it down by the workbench and didn't say anything for a while. Finally, she looked at me. "She's freaking out." "I know that," she said. "You blindsided her." I nodded. "I did." She hesitated, then asked quietly, "Was it true about the house being yours?" I pulled a copy of the will from the ammo box, handed it to her. She read it silently, then looked up. She knew, didn't she? I didn't answer. She folded the paper, handed it back, and whispered, "Good." Then she left. Not in anger, not in judgment, just with understanding. That night, Heather didn't come into the garage again. No final speeches, no passive-aggressive mantras, just silence. And in that silence, I lay back on the cot, arms folded, and stared at the cracked ceiling like it was finally quietly mine. It was just after 1000 p.m. when I heard the knock. Not loud, just 2 soft taps against the garage door like she didn't want anyone else to know she was there. I waited a beat, then opened it. Heather stood in her robe, barefoot, eyes red-rimmed. She didn't have the envelope anymore. She didn't even try to hide the way her hands shook. "I need to talk," she whispered. "Please," I stepped aside. She walked in slowly like the concrete might collapse under her weight. She sat on the edge of the cot facing the ammo box like it might open and swallow her whole. "I didn't think you'd really do it," she said. "Not all the way." I leaned against the shelf and didn't say anything. "I mean, yeah. I saw the papers, but I thought maybe you just wanted to scare me. Get even. Prove a point." She looked up at me, eyes glossy. "But you actually sold it." "I did." Her voice cracked to strangers. "It's mine to sell." She nodded slowly, swallowing whatever came next. Then she reached into her robe pocket and pulled out a folded photo. She handed it to me. It was us, me, her, and Mom. Christmas, maybe 1995. I was still in high school. Heather had braces. Mom wore that ugly red sweater she never let go of. "You remember this day?" she asked. I nodded. "You broke the ornament." "Blamed me." Mom grounded both of us. She smiled faintly. "Yeah." She looked at the floor. "I messed this up," she said. "I thought I could turn this place into something better, holier, more peaceful. But somewhere along the way, I started needing people to believe I'd always been the one holding things together. You pretended Mom didn't leave me the house." "I panicked," she said. "After she died, everything happened so fast. You were still overseas. I felt like if I didn't take control, everything would fall apart. So I just did." She wiped her eyes. "At first, I told myself I'd fix it later, but later never came. And when you walked back in, I didn't know how to step aside." Silence settled between us. Then she said the thing I didn't expect. "I can't afford to go anywhere else. Not now, not without notice. Not with Madison. Please." I didn't respond right away. I looked at the concrete floor, then the dusty garage window, then the stack of bins I'd labeled and organized for her 2 weeks ago. Then I heard another sound, the quiet creak of the side door. Madison. She stepped into view without a word, eyes wide, holding her phone like maybe she'd been listening, maybe not. But either way, she had heard enough. Heather spun around. "Honey, Madison didn't speak to her. She looked at me instead. She lied to you, didn't she?" Heather stood up. "Madison, this isn't your place. She told me you were just crashing here." Madison continued, ignoring her. "That you didn't help with anything. That you were angry. That you were unstable. Low." Heather froze. Madison's voice cracked but didn't shake. "But you were just quiet and tired and kind." I stepped back slightly. "Madison, it's late." She cut me off. "You're the only one who's ever told me the truth. You didn't even try to make her look bad. You just stayed quiet." Heather turned. "I was trying to protect her." "From what?" Madison said. "From the truth. From you." Heather opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. She looked like someone whose entire script had been ripped away mid-performance. Then Madison turned to me. "Can I come with you?" I blinked. "What?" "When you leave," she said. "Wherever you're going, I don't want to stay here." Heather gasped. "Madison, no! You can't just abandon me." Madison turned back, tears in her eyes now. "You already did." She didn't yell. She didn't storm off. She just walked out the door softly, quiet as the first knock. Heather stood still in the garage. No chanting, no incense, no affirmations. Just a mother who'd been seen too clearly, too honestly, and she had nothing left to say. Heather didn't speak to me for the first 5 days after the eviction letter. Not even a glance. She moved around the house like a ghost in athletic wear. All her usual theatrics gone. No singing bulls, no clients, no Instagram stories about boundaries or vibration. Just long stretches of silence, doors quietly shutting, and boxes stacking up in corners like guilt. Madison barely came home. She'd leave after school and stay at a friend's or sit at the library until closing. When she was around, she kept her distance. Not out of fear, but out of clarity, like she'd finally seen the full picture and wanted to stand as far from the frame as possible. I didn't say much either. There was nothing left to say. Heather didn't ask where I was going or what I planned to do next. She didn't ask how I pulled it off. She didn't even ask for an extension. She just packed. But not like someone accepting the truth. More like someone preparing a grudge for long-term storage. On day 6, she left a stack of brochures on the kitchen table titled "Healing Through Betrayal." I didn't touch them. Day 9, she tried to host one last online class from her phone in the backyard. I heard her voice strained, almost shaking as she said, "Sometimes family is the wound we spend a lifetime healing." 2 minutes later, the stream cut out. She didn't try again. By day 13, she'd stopped wearing robes, No more ankle bells or gemstone pendants, just sweatpants and a blank stare. But what struck me most wasn't her sadness. It was her certainty that I owed her something for leaving quietly. Like grace was a given. Like I should have handed her closure in a mason jar with a hemp tag that said no hard feelings. She never once said thank you. Not for giving her 29 days, not for organizing the storage unit, not for not charging her back rent, not for not going public with what she did. I'd handled everything with military precision paperwork, process, timing. I'd done it without shouting, without shaming. I didn't post a word. Didn't drag her through the court system or online. I just took back what was mine. But in Heather's world, silence wasn't mercy. It was betrayal. On day 16, I found a handwritten note on the fridge. Just so you know, Mom told me I was the one who deserved the house. You were just the one she felt guilty about. It wasn't signed. I didn't move it. I didn't crumple it. I didn't respond. I just left it there. Day 21. Movers came. She watched them carry out her salt lamps, her folding mats, her stacks of self-published journals. She didn't direct them, just stood barefoot on the porch, arms crossed like the air itself had betrayed her. The garage was nearly empty by then. My cot folded, my gear packed, the ammo box locked and strapped. Every trace of the past 6 weeks folded into one tidy duffel, and still she couldn't look me in the eye. On day 25, Madison stopped by after school. "I'm staying with Aunt Danny," she said, "just until things calm down. You okay?" She nodded. "Better than she is." She hesitated, then added, "She told people you forged the will." I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't believe her," Madison said quickly. "I saw how you handled everything. You didn't hide." "She did." I gave her a small nod. "Thanks." She reached into her backpack and handed me something. An old Polaroid. Mom, on the front porch, holding a watering can, smiling. I found it in a drawer. Thought you'd want it. I looked down at the photo, the frayed edges, the sun-bleached corners. "I do," I said. By day 28, the house was hollow. Echoes in every room, the scent of incense replaced by cardboard and dust. I walked through one last time, not to say goodbye, but to make sure nothing important was left behind. In the hallway closet, I found a box labeled Camille Old Stuff. Inside, a high school sweatshirt, an Army ID tag from Basic, a letter Mom wrote me the year I deployed. I took the letter, left the rest. On the morning of day 29, I sat on the back steps with coffee in hand, watching the sun come up over the fig tree. The same spot where Mom used to sit, snapping beans or humming with the radio. Heather passed by carrying a final crate toward the car. She didn't stop. She didn't wave. She didn't say goodbye, and that was fine because closure doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes it just looks like someone leaving. The letter came folded in 3, tucked inside one of the paper bags Madison left behind. I didn't notice it until I unpacked at the veteran housing unit 2 towns over in a quiet cul-de-sac lined with identical beige homes and trimmed hedges. It was taped to the side of a Ziploc bag labeled Camille's charger. That at first I thought it was just a note, maybe a Wi-Fi password, maybe something she forgot to tell me. But when I opened it, I saw her handwriting. Careful, all caps, like she was afraid of getting it wrong. Aunt Key. I waited until everything was over to write this because I didn't want you to think I was choosing sides. I saw the will, the real one. I saw what Mom did. I saw what she hid. But more than that, I saw how you didn't react. You didn't scream. You didn't threaten her. You didn't make it about revenge. You just did what was right even when no one was watching. I've been living in that house for 17 years, and I didn't even know what peace felt like until you started sitting in the garage. People always told me my mom was strong, but I think you're the strong one. And not just because of the army. Because you knew the truth and still chose the quiet way out. I want you to know I never believed what she said about you. Not even when I was little. Not even when she made it sound like you were the problem. Because you never talked bad about her ever. And that told me everything I needed to know. I don't know where you're going next, but I hope it's somewhere better. You don't owe anybody your story, but I'm glad I got to hear some of it. Love, Madison. I read it once. Then again. then folded it back the same way she had slowly, carefully, and slipped it into the ammo box next to the will. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because her letter didn't ask for emotion. It offered peace, the kind I'd never found in war or in that garage or in any room where I'd been spoken over by someone calling herself the healer. Later that day, I unpacked in the new place. Clean walls, no incense, no sage, just a studio with a firm bed, a full fridge, and a small back porch that faced the hills. I sat down my mug, sat in the one plastic chair that came with the rental, and breathed. No noise, no rules, no labels on my towels. No one was watching. And that was the best part. The first full morning in my new place, I didn't wake up to wind chimes or passive-aggressive door knocks. I woke up to nothing. No chanting, no curated playlists about inner light, no herbal teas being boiled like weapons, just sunlight through a half-drawn curtain and the faint sound of someone mowing a lawn down the block. It was silence. Real silence. Not the kind you build to keep people out, but the kind you finally earn after walking away from the noise. I made coffee. Real coffee. Black, bitter, familiar. The kind you don't apologize for drinking. Then I sat on the back porch with my boots up and watched a squirrel nearly fall off a fence chasing a bird that didn't care it existed. I laughed. Not hard, not loud, just enough to remind myself I could. The house was small. 2 rooms, 1 bathroom, no frills, but everything inside it was mine. The key was in my pocket, not under someone's crystal bowl. The bed had 1 pillow. My choice. The fridge had food I picked out. No labels, no warnings, no price tags pretending to be contributions. Freedom didn't come with fireworks. It came with a working thermostat and nobody asking if your energy was blocking their abundance. Outside, a woman from the next unit waved at me as she walked her dog. She didn't ask me what I did. She didn't care what I used to be. She just nodded, smiled, and kept moving. Like I was a neighbor. Nothing more, nothing less. I liked that. I spent the next few days setting up, not decorating, not curating my space, just putting things where I wanted. Hammer, boots, paperwork, the ammo box in the closet locked. Still, I didn't unpack everything. I didn't need to. The past could stay boxed for a while, maybe forever. Brandon, my lawyer, emailed to say the sale was complete, funds deposited, documents closed. I replied with 2 words. Thank you. I didn't check if Heather responded to the final notice. I didn't need to know if she filed a complaint or tried to rally her Instagram followers. Let her spin the story however she needed. That part wasn't mine anymore. Madison texted once. You settled in. Okay, I replied. Better than okay. She liked the message. That was it. That was enough. One night, I found myself rereading her letter. It had slipped between a notebook and a pack of extra batteries. I unfolded it, let my thumb rest on her handwriting for a second, and thought about everything she must have heard growing up, and how she still chose to see clearly. People say kids absorb everything. They're right. But what they don't say is that sometimes they remember who stayed quiet just as much as who made the most noise. I never said anything bad about Heather, not even when I had every reason. I didn't need to. The truth has a funny way of surviving. Even when you leave it buried in a garage, I stepped outside into the night air. No incense, just real air. Cool, dusty, honest. In the distance, someone's television murmured behind a screen door. A dog barked once, then quiet. I stood there for a minute. No shoes, no rank, no tension in my shoulders. I wasn't a freeloading soldier. I wasn't a guest. I wasn't even a survivor anymore. I was just home. And for the first time in a very long time, there was no one left to ask me for rent. No one left to call me a burden. No one watching me in case I projected the wrong thing. Just me and a door I could lock from the inside. No healing circles, no staged forgiveness, no closure ceremony. Just kit and peace so complete it didn't need an explanation. I didn't win by yelling louder. I didn't slam doors, call names, or drag anyone online. I just read the documents, followed the law, packed my things, and let the truth do what truth does. It stays standing when everyone else runs out of words. Some people say revenge has to be allowed to count. But sometimes the quietest kind, the kind that doesn't explain itself, doesn't ask for validation, is the one they never see coming. And that's the thing about family drama. You don't have to burn the house down. You just have to own it legally, completely, and in silence. If you made it this far and this kind of story hit a nerve, the slow kind of revenge story where no one screams but everything changes, then you're in the right place. I share real, raw family revenge stories just like this. The ones that feel a little too close to real life. The kind where justice doesn't come with applause but with a key and a locked door. So, hit subscribe. Stick around because sometimes the best payback is peace.